Nice to see you. Nice to have you back.
Pleasure to be here.
Nice to have you back. What do you make of the president using his executive power? You're a legislator.
Well, I think it's fine. We have been urging him to set the example for raising the minimum wage anywhere it was in his power to do so. Of course, we would prefer to pass legislation to raise the minimum wage for everyone. Over 60% of those getting the minimum wage are women, so we think it's really an important initiative. Lift millions of people out of poverty, maybe 6 million, as well as inject demand into the economy with the purchasing power it creates.
What about the problem, the precedents it sets? And I know other presidents have used executive order, but it's always, people tend to like executive order when it's your party, your president's, you're a Democrat, he's a Democrat. What about the whole idea of using executive order and bypassing Congress?
Well, I think, again, President has urged Congress to pass the minimum wage, and they have not done so. I think the question would be more to the president, if you want Congress to do so, use its power to pass the minimum wage. Why don't you use your power by executive order to raise the minimum wage? And I don't really consider it threatened to do. I think he stated that that's what he was willing to do.
What if he does it again? What if he does it on another piece of something that, another issue that comes along? Is that okay?
I hope he does. I mean, there's a big movement afoot for him to pass ENDA, which is End Discrimination in the Workplace against people in the LGBT community. We have it passed in the Senate. We have the votes in the House. We would like it to be brought up. But again, when you have exhausted the legislative remedies, passed the Senate, bipartisan support in the House, we have the votes, the public supports it, then the question is, well, why don't you do something about it where you have the power to do it?
Do we need Congress? Are you saying we don't need Congress?
No,
because some people would say that, the whole point is that, even though the Congress disagrees, the House and the Senate and the Republicans and Democrats within both chambers, is that that's still the legislative body. At what point does the president overstep?
Well, it's a question of overstep. He's only discreetly. He's not raising the minimum wage for the whole country. He's raising the minimum wage for federal contractors. He would only be able to do ENDA for federal contractors. So again, it's a narrow place. It's much better for Congress to act and for it to be the law of the land more generally. But I remind you, the Emancipation Proclamation was an executive order. There are many things that happened over time that would not have ever happened waiting for Congress, but then Congress followed through with, in fact, abolishing slavery.
I expect that the president will say tonight, as every other president, except I think probably President Gerald Ford, is the State of the Union is strong. And it always gets an enormous amount of applause. But the American people are sitting out there thinking, well, if the State of the Union is so strong, why can't the Republicans and Democrats work together and get something done? Because from the outside, it looks like you are feuding, like unbelievably feuding, like the Hatfields and the McCoys, and that nothing will get done.
Well, I think that's because there's an element in the Republican Party, and I tell my Republican friends, take back your party, but because the party is being driven by an ideological extreme set within the party that is anti-government. They wanted to shut it down.
Anti or limited government? Anti or limited?
We don't, any of us want more government than we need.
Do you think they want no government?
Well, they shut it down. And so they're anti-government, anti-science, so any of the initiatives about science, and anti-Obama. So it's a trifecta that they have. Now, I'm not painting everyone with that brush, and I'm saying that the Republicans, the grand old party, should take back their party to the force that they have been, and really dominate the debate, but not cut off the debate.
All right. One of the things that I think the president will be speaking about tonight is Afghanistan and troop withdrawal. And I don't think any American wants to be stuck in a war, and I don't pretend to have any of the answers. However, I was in the room when Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said in Afghanistan that we would not desert those women. We would not desert Afghani women. Now that we're starting to pull out, we see the Taliban is gaining ground in Afghanistan. It certainly is gaining ground in Iraq and gaining ground in Syria. And let me remind you, I don't pretend to have all the answers, but are we abandoning the women in Afghanistan?
No, we've sacrificed too much. The plight of the women and the fate of the women in Afghanistan is a very important priority for us. For Mrs. Bush, for Laura Bush. This is a priority for her. She recently appeared at a conference here on that subject. For Secretary Clinton, for Republican and Democratic women in Congress, and men too, but a real priority for us. We spend a great deal of time.
So what's going to happen when we leave? What's going to happen as the Taliban grows? Do you think the Taliban are going to be generous and fair with the women, or do you think it's a bad...
First of all, what do we mean by Taliban? Are we talking about a reconciliation with some elements of the Taliban who want to have a government that works for the people, or are we talking about the extreme elements of the Taliban coming in? If we're talking about a reconciliation, that would have to have accommodations for women. And in order for that to happen, and I've said this to President Karzai over and over again, and the Secretary has, and the President and everyone else has, there must be women at the table. If you expect whatever agreement...
Is that happening, though? I mean, I don't see that happening, and I don't see sort of the moderate Taliban. What I see reading the papers and look, I don't live there, so I only rely on what I read. But it looks very grim for the women in Afghanistan as we pull out.
Well, they have made tremendous progress while we were there. I visited girls in school and women in the professions.
But when we get out,
and poor women out in the countryside, and that is a priority for us at every level of economic and societal and governmental. There are women in government as well. And in order for any respect to be held by women for the outcomes in Afghanistan, women have to be at the table.
Always nice to see you. Enjoy the evening.
Nice to see you. My pleasure.
And you can see my complete interview with Leader Pelosi. We talked about a lot more. Just go to GretaWire.com. And coming up, gubernatorial candidate